Nas or Jay Electronica?
Well, it's Nas because that's who, because Nas is my favorite rapper.
Facts. Nas is your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. He is the one who rappers look up to. But beyond inspiring the careers of industry heavyweights, Nas has also had the privilege of being a rapper's assassin. Of course, not literally. Nas might have murdered the career of a handful of rappers, but he wasn't going around killing people on camera. However, that doesn't make what he did to them any less bloody. So let's get into it, the beef and the blood on the street. Let's get into Nas's murderous duels with rap legends. 50 Cent versus Nas.
People think I don't like Nas, right? I don't, you know what it is to play this. I was more hurt.
The mid to late 90s marked a pivotal time in the rap game, with two rising stars making their mark on the industry. In one corner, we had Nas, a talented rapper hailing from Queens, New York. Nas burst onto the scene with his groundbreaking debut album, Illmatic, which was released on April 19, 1994. The album quickly became a classic, solidifying Nas's status as one of the most promising artists of his generation. Meanwhile, in another corner, a young rapper by the name of Curtis Jackson, later known as 50 Cent, was making waves in the underground scene. Born and raised in South Jamaica, Queens, 50 Cent began his rap career by honing his skills in his friend's basement. His raw talent caught the attention of Jam Master Jay, a member of the legendary group Run DMC, who was in the process of establishing his own label, Jam Master Jay Records. Under the mentorship of Jam Master Jay, 50 Cent learned the art of songwriting and record making. He began recording songs under the rap name 50 Cent, a nickname inspired by a notorious Brooklyn stick-up artist. In 1999, 50 Cent caught the attention of the Trackmasters, a production duo known for their work with Nas. They sent 50 Cent to a studio in upstate New York to work on his debut studio album, Power the Dollar. But 50 Cent needed a song that would grab everyone's attention and put him on the map. That's when he decided to drop his commercial debut single, How to Rob, on August 10, 1999. This track was a bold move, as 50 Cent took aim at the entire rap game, dissing some of the biggest names in the industry. Surprisingly, one person he didn't diss was Nas. In fact, Nas actually took a liking to 50 Cent's style and talent. Nas even invited 50 Cent to join him on his promo tour for his fourth studio album, Nostradamus. In return, 50 Cent gave props to Nas on his diss track towards Ja Rule called Your Life's on the Line, which dropped on October 12, 1999. However, their friendship would soon face its first test. On January 23, 2001, Jennifer Lopez dropped her single, I'm Gonna Be Alright, on the Trackmasters remix. Interestingly, 50 Cent was originally featured on the song. However, the version with 50 Cent never saw the light of day, as the Trackmasters and Irv Gotti, the CEO of Murder Inc., replaced him with Nas. This was the whole Murder Inc. Nas debacle that ended up blowing up in everyone's face. Eventually, the official remix featuring Nas was released on June 10, 2002. This is where the seeds of the beef between Nas and 50 Cent were planted. According to Nas, 50 Cent felt a certain way about him doing a song with J-Lo and held a grudge from that point forward. On the other hand, 50 Cent claimed that he wasn't frustrated about the collaboration itself, but rather that Nas didn't reach out to him or do anything.
It turned, like, the way I express myself is easier for me to express it angry. So it comes off like that when I start talking about him, because I got frustrated about the situation. Because with the whole crew, like, he was in position, cool.
Adding fuel to the fire, 50 Cent didn't appreciate Nas hanging around Irv Gotti, who was the CEO of Murder Inc., the label that Ja Rule, 50 Cent's bitter rival, was signed to. This association didn't sit well with 50 Cent, as he had ongoing issues with Irv Gotti and Murder Inc. The tension between Nas and 50 Cent continued to heat up, but years would pass before it would reach its boiling point. On September 19, 2004, Lloyd Banks, a member of 50 Cent's G-Unit crew, dropped his mixtape Mo Money in the Bank Vol 3, Cashing In. One of the tracks on this mixtape, titled Burying Bodies, featured 50 Cent taking direct shots at Nas. He mocked Nas's then-wife, Kellis. The beef escalated further when 50 Cent released his highly anticipated debut studio album, Get Rich or Die Tryin', on February 6, 2003. One of the standout tracks on the album was Many Men, where 50 Cent reflected on his near-fatal shooting incident. What many people don't know is that the beat for Many Men was originally intended for Nas. According to Nas's former A&R, 50 Cent had done vocals for the track, hoping to impress Nas enough for him to keep it. However, Nas didn't finish the track, and 50 Cent seized the opportunity to make it his own. The beef took a more direct turn when Nas performed in New York's Central Park in 2004. During his set, Nas took a moment to thank the crowd for supporting real street hip-hop and took a subtle jab at 50 Cent, implying that he didn't represent the authenticity of the genre. This public slight didn't go unnoticed by 50 Cent, who responded by dissing Nas on multiple occasions during his own performances. The diss tracks continued to fly back and forth between the two artists. Nas recorded a diss track aimed at 50 Cent called Don't Body Yourself, which was leaked but never officially released. In response, 50 Cent dropped his own diss track, which just worsened the beef. The tension reached its peak when Nas mentioned 50 Cent on the track Queens Get the Money from his 2008 album Untitled. Nas referenced 50 Cent's claim that he would retire if Kanye West outsold him. After years of intense rivalry and heated exchanges, the beef between 50 Cent and Nas eventually reached a turning point. The first signs of a possible reconciliation between Nas and 50 Cent emerged in 2014. At Hot 97 Summer Jam, Nas took to the stage for a memorable performance. To the surprise of the audience, he brought out 50 Cent, and the two artists embraced, signaling the end of their long-standing beef. This reconciliation was further solidified when Nas spoke about the experience in an interview. He expressed his admiration for 50 Cent's talent and reflected on their history of touring together. Nas recognized 50 Cent's fire and drive, acknowledging his incredible talent as an artist. It was clear that both artists had come a long way from their days of animosity. Turns out, their beef was more a misunderstanding than anything else. But 50 wasn't the only rapper who would misunderstand Nas. Jeezy versus Nas. In the world of hip-hop, beefs between artists are not uncommon. They often stem from disagreements, rivalries, or personal conflicts. One such beef that gained attention in the industry was the feud between Nas and Jeezy. This beef, however, almost escalated into a full-blown battle before it was resolved through a surprising phone call. To understand the Nas versus Jeezy beef, we need to go back to the early 2000s when both artists were making waves in the hip-hop industry. This was not like with 50. Nas had already established himself as one of the greatest rappers of all time. Jeezy, on the other hand, was young blood, a rising star from Atlanta, bringing a gritty and street-oriented sound to the forefront.
I met him in the bathroom, we both use the bathroom. I go to the thing, wash my hands, he wash his hands. I'm like, yo, I'm Jeezy. He's like, yeah, what's up? But I kind of felt like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't really give me what I wanted, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, you don't know me, so I'm gonna use that for motivation.
The beef started when Nas released his highly anticipated album, Hip Hop Is Dead, in 2006. The album was met with critical acclaim, but it also sparked controversy within the hip-hop community. Jeezy in particular felt the most slighted. He was experiencing his own success with hits like Soul Survivor and Go Crazy, and he felt that Nas was taking a direct shot at him and his style of music, especially after he had just started peaking. The lyrics of the song seemed to imply that the state of hip-hop was in decline, and Jeezy interpreted it as a personal attack on his own brand of trap music. Feeling disrespected, Jeezy took to the radio waves to express his frustration. He went on a passionate rant, calling out Nas and questioning his credibility. Jeezy felt that Nas, as a veteran in the game, should have shown more respect to the younger generation of artists who were bringing a new sound to the genre. The radio rant caught the attention of Nas, who was taken aback by Jeezy's strong reaction. But Nas was cool about it, and instead of firing back with more insults and fueling the beef, Nas decided to take a different approach.
He called me, he said, yo, what's up, young? He called me.
Oh, okay.
Off of that.
Oh, so you go crazy on the radio.
He called my phone.
So okay.
I was ready to go to war about
Right.
it. I was ready for him to say something crazy. I just couldn't wait. He said, what's up, King? He said, peace, King. I said, yo, what's going on? He's like, I can understand why you feel the way you feel.
Nas understood that it was all miscommunication, and he was civil about it. Nas addressed Jeezy as king and expressed his understanding of Jeezy's feelings. He explained that the lyrics in his song were not meant to attack Jeezy personally, but were a commentary on the state of hip-hop as a whole. Nas wanted Jeezy to know that there was no animosity between them and that he respected Jeezy's success. The phone call was a turning point in their relationship. Jeezy, hearing Nas's calm and rational explanation, started to see things from a different perspective. He realized that Nas was not his enemy, but rather a fellow artist who had paved the way for others in the industry. From that moment on, Jeezy felt a newfound respect for Nas. He understood that instead of engaging in unnecessary beefs, it was more important to build bridges and support fellow artists. This would set a serious precedent for Jeezy because he would have his own version of the beef that had almost wrecked his relationship with Nas. This time, it was with another young blood, Freddie Gibbs. Gibbs's career really started under Jeezy's CTE World label, but a year after getting signed, he left the label because he didn't like the way he was handled. This devolved into track disses primarily from Gibbs, but it was all a business dispute. There was no reason why this had to get messy. Jeezy knew this. And like Nas did to him when it was his turn, he actively sought out Gibbs and ironed shit out. Some beefs have happy endings. Jay-Z versus Nas.
I even heard a rumor, you could clarify this, that there's a possibility that you and Nas might actually squash whatever differences you guys had as rappers. Is any truth to that?
I mean, you gotta understand that what we had as rappers is exactly what it is. What we had is rappers.
The Nas versus Jay-Z beef is one of the most iconic and influential rivalries in hip-hop history. And of course, it started out in the 90s. Both Nas and Jay-Z were carving their own path to success in the aftermath of both Pac and Biggie's demise. Nas burst onto the scene with his critically acclaimed debut album, Illmatic, in 1994. On the other hand, Jay-Z was making his own waves in the rap game with his debut album, Reasonable Doubt, released in 1996. While both Nas and Jay-Z were making names for themselves, the seeds of their beef were quietly being sown. It all began with subtle shots and subliminal disses exchanged between the two artists. One of the earliest instances of this subtle back and forth occurred during the making of Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt album. Nas had agreed to appear on a song called Bring It On, but he never showed up to the studio. Jay-Z felt disrespected by what he interpreted as a snub by Nas. It is believed by most that this was what set the stage for the tension that would later explode into a full-blown beef. In a retaliatory move, Jay-Z featured a sample of Nas's voice on a different song on his album. This move was seen by many as a subtle jab at Nas, a way of asserting dominance and reminding him of his absence. Mere weeks later, Nas released his second album, It Was Written, which contained a line about a Lexus that was widely interpreted as a shot at Jay-Z. The line, Lex with TV sets the minimum, was seen as a direct reference to Jay-Z, who had been flaunting luxury cars and prominently featuring them in his music videos. While Nas diplomatically claimed that the line was merely inspired by Jay-Z, it was clear to many that there was some animosity brewing between the two. These subtle shots and subliminal disses continued to escalate over the years, with both Nas and Jay-Z taking veiled jabs at each other in their songs. As the tension between Nas and Jay-Z continued to simmer, it was only a matter of time before the beef reached its boiling point. The peak of the Nas versus Jay-Z beef came in 2001, when both artists unleashed a barrage of direct attacks and diss tracks that would go down in hip-hop history. Jay-Z struck first with his song Takeover, which appeared on his album The Blueprint. Released on September 11, 2001, the song was a scathing attack on Nas and other rivals. In Takeover, Jay-Z surgically broke down Nas's life and career, leaving no stone unturned. But Jay-Z didn't stop there. He went on to dissect Nas's discography, claiming that none of his subsequent albums measured up to his debut, Illmatic. Jay-Z accused Nas of falling off and losing his touch, suggesting that he was living in the shadow of his past success. The attacks continued as Jay-Z delved into Nas's business ventures, mocking his clothing ads and even accusing him of stealing his style. Jay-Z claimed that he was the real-life inspiration for some of Nas's verses, implying that Nas lacked originality and relied on Jay-Z's influence. Takeover seemed like a knockout blow, a devastating attack that would be hard for Nas to recover from. But the world didn't know, Jay didn't know, and I definitely didn't know the absolute fuckery that Nas would deliver as a response to Jay's diss. On the 4th of December, 2001, Jay-Z's birthday, Nas dropped him a present. He called it Ether. Today, we call it the greatest diss track in the history of hip-hop.
This is when Motorola two-way pagers still existed. Because I remember I texted my A&R in LA and I said, Nas just dropped this Ether record and it's kind of crazy and he may have won.
Ether was a scathing and comprehensive takedown of Jay-Z. Nas didn't hold back, launching a full frontal assault on his rival. The track's name, Ether, was a metaphorical reference to the fumes that ghosts and spirits don't like, symbolizing Nas's intention to destroy Jay-Z in both the physical realm and the spirit realm. Ether began with memories of a pre-famed Jay-Z borrowing jewelry from his mentor Jazz, flipping the narrative and suggesting that Jay-Z had been the one in need. Nas then moved on to accuse Jay-Z of stealing lyrics and style from other rap greats, including the legendary KRS. He also pointed out that Jay-Z stole from Notorious B.I.G., claiming that him and Rockefeller Records co-founder Dame Dash had stolen their entire cool, reserved rapper, teamed with flashy money-throwing label head shtick directly from Biggie and Sean Combs. But it wasn't just the precision and detail of Nas's disses that got attention. It was the raw anger and emotion that permeated the track. Nas didn't hold back, unleashing a barrage of insults and personal attacks. Some of the disses were childish and puerile, and yes, at times homophobic. Nas called Jay-Z ugly, compared him to a camel, and made derogatory comments about his appearance and alleged sexual preferences. The shock value of Ether was undeniable. It was a no-holds-barred assault that left listeners stunned. The track was so powerful that it became a verb in hip-hop culture. To Ether, your opponent meant to deliver a crushing, spirit-destroying diss. The release of Ether marked a turning point in the Nas versus Jay-Z beef. Nas had not only responded to Jay-Z's attacks, but had done so with a ferocity and precision that left no doubt about his lyrical prowess. Jay-Z would respond, but even his response didn't match the clinical ferocity of Ether. It came off as crass, and eventually he found himself apologizing for his diss. Nas and Jay would eventually squash the beef, but the scar Ether left was eternal, something he would never forget. And even if he tried, fans of hip-hop the world over wouldn't let him. Biggie V is Nas.
I was in LA when Biggie passed. He was on his way. He was supposed to come to a party that Steve Stout and I were throwing in the hills, and where we were supposed to speak because we hadn't been on the best terms around that time. And you know, he never made it, and it messed me up.
It's Biggie versus Nas. And once again, we're back to Illmatic. If you are aware of how hip-hop gradually progressed through the 90s, then you know that when Illmatic dropped in 94, hip-hop wasn't the dominant genre, R&B was. And so when Nas dropped his critically acclaimed debut, it was met with high praise. But it did not project him into the stratosphere of mainstream fame. Now, before you argue with me, hear me out. Because while Nas didn't get the mainstream love he deserved, Biggie did. But Biggie came after Nas. He dropped his debut project Ready to Die 5 months after Nas did, and he immediately got shot to mainstream fame. Unlike Nas, Biggie's debut album achieved both critical acclaim and commercial success. Ready to Die was a commercial juggernaut, selling millions of copies and solidifying Biggie's status as a rap superstar.
I heard you was running things. I see you still running your mouth.
Man, say what? Biggie Smalls in the house. What's happening, baby?
Now, I'm not ranking Ready to Die over Illmatic. That's for you to decide. I'm just pointing out that Biggie was the obvious heavyweight, literally and metaphorically. You can argue lyrically in the comments section. So what followed was a contest for the throne of New York, because while Nas had crowned himself king, the streets had anointed Biggie as king, and he echoed it in his tracks. So as the year 1996 rolled in, tensions between Nas and Biggie began to escalate. Nas, feeling overlooked and overshadowed by Biggie's rapid rise to stardom, decided to take aim at the self-proclaimed king of New York on his sophomore album, It Was Written. It Was Written, released in 1995, showcased a more commercial sound from Nas, as he aimed to reach a wider audience. However, amidst the catchy hooks and melodic beats, Nas didn't shy away from taking shots at Biggie. In tracks like The Message and Shootouts, Nas questioned Biggie's authenticity and reminded him that there was only one king of New York, Nas. But Nas wasn't done yet. Just a few months later, in February 1997, he released a second diss track aimed at Biggie, titled Last Words. Unfortunately, this would be the final shot fired in their beef. Tragically, Biggie was killed in March 1997, but he had already prepared his response in his sophomore album, Life After Death, which dropped just a few weeks after he was murdered in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles. The song reserved for Nas and a couple of industry heavyweights at the time was the diss track, Kick in the Door. It was a scathing rebuttal. But the full effect couldn't be felt, especially since Biggie was already gone. While the beef between Nas and Biggie was cut short, the shots that were exchanged left a lasting impact on the hip-hop community. Nas's disses were subtle yet biting, questioning Biggie's credibility and calling into question his authenticity as the king of New York. The tension between the two rappers was palpable, and fans were left wondering what could have been if the beef had continued. It's important to note that despite the beef, there was also a level of mutual respect between Nas and Biggie. They shared the mic on tracks like Gimme the Loot and The World Is Filled, showcasing their chemistry and talent as collaborators. However, when it came to claiming the title of the best rapper in New York, the competition was fierce. The untimely death of Biggie in 1997 marked the end of the Nas versus Biggie beef. It was a tragic loss for the hip-hop community, as both artists had so much more to offer. The world was robbed of witnessing a true battle between two rap titans, each with their own unique style and lyrical prowess. Looking back, it's difficult to say who would have come out on top in this battle. Nas, with his intricate wordplay and storytelling abilities, or Biggie, with his larger-than-life persona and melodic sensibility. It's a question that sparks endless debates among hip-hop fans to this day. Tupac vs. Nas.
James gonna take an L that night. Basically, that's what you're saying.
We always took an L, bro. It was guns all in there. I wouldn't be here if a punch would have been thrown. Nas wouldn't be here. Pac would have been gone 2 days earlier.
Tupac never got into a lyrical beef with Nas, and Nas never dissed Shakur. But somehow, in the after party of the '96 MTV Awards, both men found themselves facing off against each other, with goons on both sides, waiting for either of them to just say when. It's an exciting, tragic story, all right, but to understand it, we gotta pedal back to the morning of that same day when Tupac Tupac had just flown into New York with Suge and the Death Row crew. But you gotta understand the stakes. Tupac was returning to New York City at the worst possible time. This was less than 5 months. After the release of the legendary diss track Hit 'Em Up, where he disses the entire East Coast, including Mobb Deep, close associates with Nas. He had returned to New York since that time, and it was just a year and a half ago that he got stabbed 5 times at the Millennium Hotel. The East Coast-West Coast beef was at its peak, and security was the #1 priority. But Tupac declined to have Death Row security on his tail. Instead, he got his outlaw members, Napoleon and Hussein Fatal, to get some of their homeboys from way back to ride with them. Because if you didn't know, East Harlem, New York was Tupac's birthplace. Now, back at the hotel, Napoleon returned with a bag of guns, and Hussein Fatal returned with a city bus of hood homies. But they all couldn't follow him to the award show, so they stayed back at the hotel partying while Pac, Snoop Dogg, Napoleon, and Fatal, Suge and his Death Row goons headed out to the award show. On the red carpet, Tupac got into his first altercation when a member of Nas's crew bumped into him. It turned into a shouting match, but it quickly fizzled out when Suge intervened. Moments later, Nas would arrive. Backstage of the event, they crossed paths for the first time. They both acknowledged themselves, with Nas telling Pac, "Hey, do your thing," and Pac responding, "And you do yours." But there was trouble on the outside. Cause, while Nas and Pac was being civil to each other inside the building, Nas's brother Jungle had almost gotten into a fight with Death Row security over a woman, and after threatening to snatch a Death Row chain from them. When Pac heard it, he rushed to confront Jungle, who stood 10 toes down and repeated everything he said word for word to Pac, every threat. But before things could get really nasty, Napoleon stepped in. Pac was carried away by security, Nas' crew stepped in, and Suge broke it all up. This should have been the end of it all, but Nas returned and heard what happened. Pac had almost jumped his brother, so Nas summoned every one of his goons from Queensbridge to link up. It was an army of homies that answered that call. Was bound to go down. Meanwhile, Pac was done with his part in the award show, and the event was wrapping up. He was supposed to go to the after party but was no longer feeling it, and decided instead to return to the hotel. But when he got there, what he saw was about 100 hood homies waiting for him. Hussein Fatal had outdone himself, and while Pac was grateful, they were just too many. So he and Snoop Dogg decided to take them all to the after party. He gave all of them Death Row t-shirts, which they all wore, and together they marched on to Bryant Park, where the party was happening. Now, one thing about Bryant Park though was that it was open and had very little security. So if a fight did happen there would be blood on the streets before 12 would arrive, intervene, or squash whatever was happening. When Pac got to the party, he and Snoop split and began to mix with the crowd. Nas was already there, and he saw Snoop first. He asked Snoop if they had any beef, and Snoop immediately folded, saying that it was between him and Pac. He wanted nothing of it. Meanwhile, Pac was jamming to Nas's If I Ruled the World when he noticed Nas and his crew coming towards him. Pac's crew were not behind him at the time, and soon enough, he was surrounded by Nas's crew.
A couple of my peoples in the back of him. And on the outside of us is them Diesel niggas and all the niggas that came with us. And
Right.
so we completely in the middle. Pac is in the middle, Nas in the middle. We are completely surrounded by Queensbridge.
But soon enough, the Death Row squad caught up and it was a proper face-off. Nas challenged Pac on the disses he dished out to Mobb Deep in practically all of New York. Pac was 10 toes down. It should have gotten ugly, but they had good intentions at the end of the day. And instead of turning into a bloody war, Nas and Pac ironed out their differences and agreed to not diss each other. They even planned to meet in Vegas some days later. 2 days later, Pac got killed in an unrelated incident. If you enjoyed this expose, click on a video on your screen to watch even more interesting mini documentaries like this one, and I'll see you there.